Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
I welcome you back to part 2 of our 2-week series addressing the issue of aging in America. On last week's program, it was most informative, talking about a lot of the case study of Idaho, but also referring to throughout the United States under federal law, the commissions on aging are there and do much work. And we talked about some of the growth in population of the senior citizens and also care in nursing homes or assisted living and other issues. We welcome back our 2 guests from last week to continue this important discussion. First of all, Pearl Bouchard, who is the director of Region 1 in Idaho of the Idaho Commission on Aging. Pearl, welcome back. It was most informative last week.
I enjoyed it.
And equally, we're pleased to have Jan Young, who is the ombudsman in Region 1 of the 5 northern counties of Idaho for the Idaho Commission on Aging, and her responsibility is to watch very carefully treatment of particularly the frail and those who are dependent upon others in these facilities. Jan Young, welcome back.
Thank you for inviting me.
And we have our regular panelist, Erna Reinhardt, who is the Director of Public Relations at North Idaho College, and we'll do a little different rotation. If our people in the booth will get ready, I'm going to start with these 5 graphs or charts, so we make sure we get to those. They're from Idaho, but they reflect very much what's going on in the rest of the country on this growth and the demand and resources. The first one, Pearl, is about Idaho, and then the others will be very pertinent to the country. If you'd share that with us.
Yes, this is showing how our state is broken into 6 regions, and you might notice very large geographic areas. North Idaho is only 5 counties, but we have some that are as many as 10 counties that people are having to travel and take planning responsibility for.
And it's my understanding in other states you have the state commission, and they too are broken into areas, and therefore the structure is pretty much the same.
They can be single county areas, or in some instances, for example, Alaska and Wyoming are single designations where the entire state is one.
Has a lot to do with population.
Correct.
If you're in a large county such as Cook County in Chicago, it'd be different. The second graph we have here deals with case management referrals. Would you just give us what these different scales mean?
What this is showing, Tony, is if a social worker goes into a home and visits with a senior and their family, the kinds of referrals that they're making here in North Idaho. And the largest referrals are to informal supports. And we touched on that briefly at the previous show.
And that's the red.
About the red, yes. 38% of care is provided by family members. So we always work first to try to connect people with their existing networks. Then we have in the yellow, which is the second highest, other services in the community. So typically your social workers will know what other kinds of services are available in the community, and they can connect you up with them, making it easy so you don't have to go out and rummage through the phone book.
And the green one?
The green is, that's the informal support. I'm sorry. The red was Idaho Commission on Aging. Those are services funded by the state of Idaho.
So that's the largest.
That is the largest.
Your agency is itself, or the commission.
And actually that does stand to reason because people are at their desperate point when they call us and ask for help.
Right.
And then the blue one is the very smallest. And, there's a misconception that most of our elderly population are receiving Medicaid. And
it's
that
very
small one are
really
people
small.
who are eligible to receive Medicaid support in their homes.
Even though Medicaid expenses are growing, but of course it covers other things Medicaid does. But for the Medicaid for low income and all, separate from Medicare. Would we go to the next chart, please?
This is for the state of Idaho and showing the growth projections, 65 and older, up to the year 2040.
So it starts in 1980, this chart does, and it projects out to 2040.
And what's really astounding is That 85 and older age group within the 65 and older is the fastest growing group. And the reason that's so astounding is because of the tremendous amount of support that it takes to keep people of that age. Here in North Idaho, 60% of people 80 and older are living alone.
Is that right?
Yes. So we want to help protect those people as
yes.
much as we can.
And that could just be referred to other states. That kind of increase would be happening all over the country.
Correct.
And then the next one deals with senior citizen growth in Idaho.
This is showing the comparisons over time, and from 1980 to the 2000 census, we had 126% growth in that 85 and older population that
That's
we were just
amazing.
looking at. Yes. Idaho is the 5th fastest growing state for this population on a percentage basis.
And then the final one that we want to show our viewers is the client waiting list. Not only in this is our state, but it's true around the country.
Absolutely true around the country. This is something that's very sad to talk about. What's interesting is that if someone calls our office and they get put on a waiting list to have a social worker visit them, it may be anywhere between 2 weeks and 6 weeks before someone can get out there. And then once the social worker visits them and refers them to another service, they go on a waiting list again to wait to receive services for Homemaker.
And so this is just 4 quarters here that we see here alone. It's really something. One more question then to Erna, based on these charts that we've done. I think they are very revealing. And that is that the population's growing that you serve, and we have some inflation, of course. Now with things like gas prices, now you have to travel around the counties. The budgets that, not just in Idaho, but around the country, the budget increases or staff increases is not keeping up with the growth. It's kind of like in prisons too, prisons have been growing, particularly in our state. So we're taxed for resources. I don't mean paying taxes. I mean, we're just very burdened by the fact that we have such demands without the resources.
I took a look at our budget, Tony, and we actually, for the northern 5 counties of Idaho, have between state and federal funds an average of $45 per person to provide services. How much can you do for that?
Yeah.
Not very much. And then another interesting thing to look at is the poverty guidelines. We primarily serve people who are very low income, and a single person on poverty is expected to live on $798 a month. So, the ability for us to be able to collect fees from them is very, very marginal.
Yes, thank you. Erna Reinhardt.
Pearl, I want to start with you. Obviously, we're all living longer, and that isn't always good news because the people that you're trying to serve they're becoming more and more and more of them. I'm interested, though, in trends. Would you say that over the last 5 to 10 years, the needs of the population that you serve has changed, or are those needs still the same?
The needs that we've seen changing is this idea of helping family members that are giving the care. It's been a burden that they've withheld or kept for themselves a long time, and what has been indicated through research is that they wear out. They can be 8 years, 10 years giving this care. And so we've begun to see some change where they are willing to come forward and say, I need a break. And so we've been able to start providing services to give what's called respite to family members. That's been a real positive aspect. Another thing that we have seen change is that this whole concept of waiting lists has really altered our thinking, because we've had to start scoring people numerically and deciding who's going to be served first. And so those with the highest need are being seen first. And what that means is that they're more complicated cases, there are more people in poverty, and it makes it a lot harder work.
Thank you. Jan, you gave us some great tips last week, and I want to have you expand on those a little bit again this week. Lots of times it's a family member or a friend that may be looking for a facility for that loved one, and give us some great ideas. You did this last week, but I just want to delve into this a little bit deeper. Give us some great ideas on what kinds of things that those people should be looking for when they're looking for a good match for their loved one for a facility.
Well, first of all, they need to, what are their loved one's interests? And then go into the different facilities and look at what different types of activities they're doing. Are they appropriate for their mother or father or grandma or grandpa? Pay attention. Are the residents clean? Are they in clean clothes? Is their hair combed? Do they smell okay? Does the facility smell okay? You know, again, how are the staff interacting with the residents? How are the residents interacting with the staff? Because they can have visitors and the staff can be really nice to the residents, but if the residents, you know, don't like the staff person because they've been ignoring or giving bad care, they're not going to be nice. They're not going to be nice. So just, you know, keep your eyes opened and investigate. Go several times. Don't go the same time each time. Go different days, different times. Maybe go for breakfast. Maybe go late at night. Just check them out.
Those are all great ideas.
Take the person with you too, because you might like it, but they might hate it.
Great.
Always having balance on the program is important too. We've been stressing the problems, which we should, but also there are a lot of great facilities. And thank heavens we have those facilities, because when someone gets serious dementia or Alzheimer's and all, there are times when they simply can't be at home anymore, or other sicknesses, cancer and all, where they have to have that around-the-clock care, and we appreciate that. And I know in your work you see those facilities that are well-run. But during our break, I heard you say something, Jan, that I thought was really significant that Erna brought up during the break, and that is when that difficult moment comes in which a parent can't care for themselves at home, or they can't drive any longer, but the spouse does it, or they're going into a facility. Try to share with that difficult moment for children and how they deal with trying to make that transition easier, or sensitive to the feelings of the parent.
Most of the time it's not an easy thing. Most families don't all agree. Siblings don't all agree. The best thing that they can do is try and come together and remember it's not what they think or the way that they feel things should be. It's what's best for mom or dad or grandma or grandpa. And that is really hard because there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of stress when you are placing an individual. One of the things that I noticed when we had to place my father, I just thought everybody had been into a nursing home and knew what they were like. And I watched two of my brothers really fold because they had never been in there and they were really upset by it. So maybe everyone should get together and go to the facility and look at the facility. We really do have good facilities here.
You also mentioned during the break that some examples of a home where maybe it's the husband, he's elderly now, and the wife is taking care of him. How do you advise the wife, who may be somewhat elderly herself, how do you keep that transition smooth? Maybe the husband's been a very independent person all at once. Now he may have to take some direction from his wife or children.
Well, if they have Alzheimer's, they aren't going to know any different. It's just they're going to be kind of fighting anyone telling them what to do because they're in a confused state. But it's hard for a spouse to take care of an individual 24/7 without getting upset or maybe thinking that he's just doing that on purpose or she's just doing that to get back at me, and they don't know. The person with Alzheimer's does not know what what they're doing. They don't realize that they might not be doing what their loved one wants. They're just confused.
Okay. Paul, I want to come back to you because another area we haven't touched on yet. And again, because of some people that I have talked to and researched, is I know from state to state, and that's a state matter, laws governing the safety and protection of individuals in those facilities. Would you share with us some of your comments about, we've also here, rightly so, talked about the good care that so many of them get, but there are abuses. And you hear them all around America where someone's in a bed with bed sores, or their bank account's emptied, or they've over-medicated, or they don't get their medications. And there's certain of these issues that are brought up, such as emptying their bank account. Those are criminal acts.
They are criminal.
And so I have heard that in some of those situations, they're only misdemeanors. Would you talk something about legislation as a director, and you're close with the state office and others? What do we need to do we're not doing?
Actually, our state legislature during the last session changed the penalty from a misdemeanor to a felony.
For what kind of acts would that be?
For any abuse, neglect, or exploitation of an adult, anyone 18 years or older who is vulnerable.
Okay.
And that vulnerability has to do with cognitive abilities and physical abilities. And so that was a step forward for the state of Idaho. And it's usually some specific case that occurs that prompts an individual legislator to feel compelled to do something about it. But Tony, what's really happening in the state of Idaho, at least, and I would guess around the country, is that the staffing is not there to take care of these problems. Just for example, in our office alone, we have 2 workers who are designated specifically for following up on abuse, neglect, and exploitation. And they're handling an average of 36 cases a month per person. And what bothers me about that, and we have a requirement by code to respond within 72 hours. And what concerns me about it is that we're not responding in good quality ways. It takes a lot of follow-up. And we're hoping that this new legislation that passed will prompt our prosecuting attorneys, as a matter of fact, to be a little more, have a little more due diligence.
That sends a very strong message.
Yes, because with this misdemeanor concept, they weren't willing to prosecute cases that we forwarded on to the police department. We are required, if we believe there is a good reason to think that abuse, neglect, or exploitation occurred, to follow it up with the police department. And we, in the last 3 years, have had 2 cases that were prosecuted. 2. And that's just not right.
That may change with the felony status. Let me ask you to comment on something else in relation to this. I want to emphasize there are a lot of great facilities around the country, and they're well managed, and they don't have serious problems. But if at any facility there's someone there that is doing those things wrong, or in the end, the owner of that facility, the board, or the president, or the managers are liable. So would you talk to that point, that they could be in a very difficult situation from a financial viewpoint or in a civil suit? I mean, there have been cases around America where millions of dollars have been awarded. So would you address from that viewpoint that, does that help to say to management, you better run your facility with great compassion?
I think it does help, and they have a requirement, by the way, according to law, to report any abuse, neglect, or exploitation that's occurring in their facility.
Once they learn about it.
Once they learn about it, they're required to report it, and most instances they do report it.
Do they report it to the police or to you or both? Or?
They can report it to police, they could report it to health and welfare, they could report it to our office as well, as long as they get it reported. And then people can follow up and make sure that procedures are followed properly. It's when people aren't reporting that you really get nervous, because typically they know this is going on. And if they don't report, they've broken a law, not reporting.
Okay. Erna Reinhardt.
I want to switch gears a little bit. Pearl, I'm going to start with you, but Jan, chime in at any time. I'm interested in nutrition, and I'm sure that your population, their needs change as we all get older. What would be some good ideas for those of us that are caring for our older parents in terms of how we can provide as good a nutrition as we can when their appetites are declining?
That's a really tough one because the taste buds do decline over time and different medications have different effects. But from my personal perspective, having managed a nutrition program, I think the key thing is monitoring, that the groceries, number one, are getting into the house because not all these people are capable of getting out and grocery shopping. Our transportation support is deplorable. So if they don't have a family member actually bringing them to the grocery store or going to the grocery store for them, the first question is, how are the groceries getting into the house? And then I think it'd be really good to monitor the groceries and what's happening with them, because as eyesight declines, you'd be surprised what you would find in a refrigerator. We've had, for example, when meals have been delivered, which is a good way to supplement nutrition, to have meals delivered for lunch, we have at times found where people have stocked that food in their refrigerator for weeks, and their eyesight is so poor they can't really see the deterioration of the quality of the food, and so they could eat something that's very poor.
Or they forget, which is so common also. Share with us, Pearl, also a little bit about the meals that can be provided by your agency.
There are several senior centers throughout, actually all across the country. You will find the senior center structure that exists, and they prepare noonday meals, which not only give older adults an opportunity to come together in fellowship and share in a meal, but if they're unable to leave their home, then those senior centers very frequently deliver meals, hot meals to them, or frozen meals if distance is a concern. And they are required to be 1/3 of a recommended daily allowance. And, you know, it's surprising to hear some of these people, this is the only good meal that they get in a day. And sometimes are splitting that up and eating it twice instead of once. So we'd all be surprised at some of the things that elders go without.
Wow. One of the things that your agency is so good at is just providing information, and just listening to you today. I think if people, it's great that they know that you're there and they can pick up the phone and call you if they have a question. And I think we're going to put up contact information in just a minute. But if someone, maybe their instincts are telling them that something isn't quite right, Jan, how do they get a hold of you?
Each facility has a poster with the Ombudsman's phone number, and they can call me, call the office.
And is there a range of things that you will help them address? I mean, are there some things that maybe they shouldn't call you about, or some things that give some ideas on what would be some good things to call you about?
They can call me on anything as far as quality of care, residents' rights. If it's getting into abuse, then they need to contact Adult Protection at our agency. We also have information and assistance. A lot of times people just want that information. We have that at the agency too. I address any complaint that someone gives me that you know is happening in a facility.
We've put all the numbers up on the screen right now. The website, an 800 number, and an area code 208, particularly for people out of state that may want to talk to you about who's in their state they can contact. Pearl, give the 800 number, would you? It's on the screen, but
It's 1-800-786-5536, and that does work anywhere in the country. You don't have to, it isn't just for Idaho.
that's important to network and all. As you said, all the states have this, so that's all very, very important in the process. With that, I want to talk a little bit about, from your perspective as an experienced administrator, Pearl. We've talked about a lot of challenges, but what do you see on the horizon in relation to this question? There's so many needs in our society. need a lot of money for education. Our infrastructure, our interstate highways have been around a long time now, and a bridge is about 50 years in the last so we need, and the Congress has appropriated some money for transportation. We got the terrible storm that took place in the southern United States, and we have foreign policy questions. There is such a draw on the money, and we have high costs dealing with some medical care now. How do you say to those who are responsible for the public funds, how are they going to meet all these needs, and also, certainly in your case, it's one of the fastest growing populations, provide more for you? It just seems overwhelming.
It is, Tony, and you mentioned the different draws. There actually is even talk now about discontinuing the prescription drug program that hasn't even started yet with Medicare to help pay for this disaster in Louisiana. So it's a difficult choices. I think that we will, from here on out, always have waiting lists, because we have to accept as a community and as a country that we cannot serve all the needs out there. And what really disturbs me, however, is that some administrators are choosing not to provide outreach into the community and say, these are the services available to you, because they have these waiting lists. They don't want any more names on the waiting list. But I think what we have to do is really re-examine that philosophy and accept that we want to serve those with the most needs.
Right.
And so we have to know who has the needs first in order to know who has the most. When anyone gets on a waiting list for us, it isn't first come, first serve. It's based on the most need. And that places a burden on us of...
You have to kind of know the assets of a family, too. Some people might want you to take care when the family has funds, or the children.
That's
so
right.
you have to look at need.
Right. And it's a burden for us to have to come up with a method of doing that. But at least we can feel as though we are getting the best use for the dollars that we have.
On that note, we have to bring the program conclusion. Pearl Bouchard and Jan Young, thank you, and say back to your staff, congratulations for what the work they do. And I just feel that these two programs have been very important, discussing a very great challenge, an important issue, and the importance of our senior citizens and their well-being. Good luck in your work, and we know that you will continue to serve many people in this area, as people do across America. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've found this program to be informative and a lot of decisions that you may have to make in the future, and I hope it has been helpful. I invite you to be with us again next week at this same time, and we'll discuss yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.